Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name's Tom Luongo. Hope you're having a good time. Listen, it's Monday night. It's September 10th. It's 2018. We have a lot to talk about. So let's start with what I think is going on in Idlib. I think this is really important. Obviously, I mean, we've got Russian warships and American warships and planes flying, and everybody's doing military exercises, and everybody's virtue signaling, and everybody's chest thumping, and threats are flying left and right. Accusations are flying left and right. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. And now finally, the insane mustache shows up and finally says something. John Bolton gave a speech today at the Federalist Society, which is a shame that John Bolton would be speaking at the Federalist Society. But that being said, that's an organization I actually don't have too much trouble with. But that being said, good evening, MAGA Princess. How are you? We talked about this a little bit on Friday. We're going to talk about it again tonight. I've got an article in with Strategic Culture that hasn't gone live yet. Should go out tomorrow, most likely. Usually doesn't take very long. I sent it in on Saturday afternoon. No, Sunday morning. And I've come to the conclusion that there's not going to be World War III. John Bolton can talk a good game all he wants. But all of this is about trying to figure out a way to get the United States out of Syria over the dead bodies of the neocons and the MI6 and everybody else and British intelligence and the Davos crowd and everybody. They're all going to do what they're going to do. The white helmets are going to put out propaganda. The neocons are going to bluster. No one wants Syria to end. But the only other option is if there's a military confrontation, then we have World War III, and nobody profits in World War III. And I'm going to give you the main reason why I don't think this is going to happen. It has nothing to do with the desires of the people who are mostly fomenting this, because they want it. Some of them still think they can win a war, an all-out war with Russia. They're insane, but they think they can do it. I don't think this is going to happen for one reason and one reason alone. Now, if I can just remember it. No one wins in this scenario. And the main reason is what I touched on in an article that I wrote over the weekend called Destroying Trump Destroys More Than America. Good evening, Mustang Girl. How are you, love? Been a while. And I'll touch on it again tonight. The United States cannot afford to get into a military confrontation with a equal or superior power. We can't do it. The entire world economy rests on the idea that the United States is governed by men, not governed by men, but governed by laws and not men, and has the military and social, political cohesion to backstop the entire world economy. So, if the United States were to get into a shooting war with Russia and Kinzhal missiles wipe out 3/4 of our aircraft carriers before we can blink, you know, Mach 20 missiles that can wipe out aircraft carriers or worse, major installations that we have around the world. then what do you think happens to the world financial system? What do you think happens to the people who currently think they run the world's ability to continue to lever up against and leverage our labor for their ends? I didn't say, user 13 brings up the point that she doesn't believe that we've had cohesion for at least a decade. Not going to argue with that. It's not about reality. Markets don't care about reality. Markets trade on sentiment and delusion. Hold on for just a second. Big Black Johnson, you have one more chance. And then I come out with the banhammer. I don't screw around. I don't play games. All right? So, when you seriously look at the potential consequences of a military confrontation, direct military confrontation between the Russians and the Americans have everything to lose. The very people who are stoking this conflict have the most to lose. What they want is situations like Syria to last as proxy wars and low order conflicts for years. They want other people to die without the US ever putting real military assets in danger. Because when you do that, you can sell more weapons. When you do that, you can keep financial markets on edge. You can push and pull currency markets easily. Because, hey, write a headline, need a boogie, need to drop the Dow 500 points. Spin up a boogeyman. This is why they don't want Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump to get along. They don't want North Korea settled. They don't want peace on the Korean Peninsula. Peace isn't profitable to these people. That's how perverse this whole political paradigm is. And I just pulled all of that alliteration off the top of my hat. The poet in me every once in a while comes to the fore. All right. So I can't get that upset about this. I can't believe that would play out. So, user 13's comment, the neocons would be completely discredited. What do you mean would be? And their ultimate agenda would fail utterly if we got into a shooting war with Russia. Well, yeah, that's ultimately what I'm saying. But it goes deeper than that. It goes far deeper than that. It hits Wall Street. It hits K Street. It hits the city of London. It hits Frankfurt. It hits Zurich. It hits Basel. It hits the IMF and the WTO and the World Bank and all of it. It hits them at their core. Good evening, Thordoom. How are you? It hits them at their core. I don't underestimate the power of the Israeli lobby. What I don't underestimate is the power of markets. Because at the end of the day, the Israeli lobby does not control the institutional flow of capital around the world. No one does. The people who think they run the world only think they run the world. They don't actually run the world. Guys like Soros may have a God complex. That doesn't mean they're God. It just means they have a God complex. And they need therapy. Or in Soros's case. Now, I'm not allowed to say that on YouTube. They'll ban me. Oh, right. The Jesuits control everything. Are you GDM rocks? Seriously, dude. Are you? That brings me way back. The Jesuits! Oh, God. That brings me back to 2016. Wow. Yeah. Send Soros to the glue factory, as it were. So when you factor it all, when you put it all together, no one wins. Did I read the article on Zero Hedge about Trump sanctioning China for the fake Uyghurs re-education camps? No, I didn't. Look, at this point, Trump doesn't need an excuse to put sanctions on tariffs on people. He still has a 17th century view of trade. He still gets bad information from a lot of his advisors. Donald Trump is a lot of things. Swift on international trade, he is not. That's okay. He doesn't have to be perfect. I'm okay with it. Good evening, Resolute Bell. How are you? So, he thinks the trade deficit is the thing hollowing out America. The thing hollowing out America is not the trade deficit, and it's not the opioid crisis. Those are symptoms. As I said this afternoon in an article and the podcast that I put out this afternoon, the thing hollowing out the United States and hollowing out our wealth is this insane system of subsidy and government intervention at fundamental levels, which wastes and destroys trillions of dollars and malinvests trillions of dollars in capital every year. Okay? So, at this point in time, you know, we're going to bluff and blunder. We're going to bluff and bluster. We're going to chest thump. We've already pre-established all of this. Like, we don't even need to have Assad use chemical weapons now. We know he wants to, and therefore we have the right to attack. Are you kidding me? The Russians are just sitting back, continuing to write a list of grievances and deplorable. I'll get to your question in just a minute. A list of grievances, a list of flirtations with the truth. Because here's the gig. If they continue to do this, which is what they've been doing, documenting everything that the United States has done in Syria and Ukraine and everywhere else. Why? Because when the political process starts after Idlib is liberated and there's no reason left for the United States to be in Syria, and the two enclaves of U.S. troops that we have in Syria are in serious logistical dead zones, in tenuous positions that could easily be overrun. When the political process starts, the United States is going to be shut out of it via the UN and everybody else, regardless of how Nikki Haley bangs her friggin' shoe on the table. It won't matter, because the Russians are going to be able to show everybody a list of all the things, of all the war crimes that we're guilty of, and go, you don't get a seat at the table. You created this shit. Now shut up. This is what's happening. That's what's going to happen. So when looking at all of this and understanding that we're in this very ugly period where the people who have power and the people who benefit from the system don't want to give up their benefits. They like their bennies, right? They like their empire. They like the, empire with benefits kind of thing. They love this stuff. But eventually it has to fail. Now, there's some of them who are the true ideologues or addicted to power. Well, that's what North on 60, the line of rhetoric pre-crime is very scary. They're just making stuff up about Assad and Russia and then acting on their lies. Well, yeah, but those are the actions of desperate people. Look at how weak and ineffectual Theresa May looks. No one's even bothering to listen to her anymore when she says, oh, we're going to prosecute the Russians for the Skripal poisoning. No one even gives a shit anymore. It doesn't move markets. She can't get anybody to actually listen to her. That's the Those are the protestations and declarations of an ignored person. She might as well be like the crazy woman standing in the corner over at the GA going, but Novichok, and everybody's like, yeah, fuck you, okay? But what do you make out of Erdogan bringing more troops to Idlib? Do you think it is to not let the terrorists get to Turkey or to actually hinder Russia and Syria? I think it's a little bit of both. I think Erdogan continues to play both sides against the fence because he wants the United States to let up on the hybrid war attack on his country, while at the same time saying, look, I'm still going to buy oil from Iran and I'm still going to do business with them because they saved my life when you guys tried to kill me. You know, he did go in with the U.S.'s agenda at the summit in Sochi over the weekend. And pretty much that precluded any sincere statement or plan of action being agreed to by Turkey, Russia, China. Teresa's beyond a crappy dancer. She's terrible. Okay? So... and the British deep state wants her gone anyway. They just want her to sign off on a bad Brexit deal and then they're going to get rid of her too. So, Erdogan be Erdogan. He's just who he is. Brain Cramps ask, will Turkey bail on the US EU debt and move Russia to solve their solvency issues? Well, they are. They're going to move out of the dollar, certainly. They may move more into the euro. We'll see how Trump's sanctions regime hits them. He's already moving to bilateral trade with China, with Russia, with Iran, and a variety of other regional dance partners. But it's going to take a long time to de-dollarize the Turkish economy. It's not going to happen overnight. Turkey's in for a rough ride for the next 3 or 4 years. All right, I got to back up for a second now because what I've just talked about to this point does bear on what Deplorable asked earlier, and I should talk about that. So I'm going to read the question, and then we're going to talk about it because it does tie into all this stuff. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, all the geopolitics is nice, but you know, what the fuck do you do about it, right? All right, so I have an investment question for you, which I can't answer in specific because I am not a licensed investment advisor. So I don't have my Series 6, I don't have my Series 7. I can only get this to you in terms of you have to consider all of this as not investment advice or the solicitation to buy or sell securities. I am not an investment advisor. This information is purely for informational purposes. I'm just some fucking guy on the internet with an opinion. Everybody has one. Salt to taste. All right. I have an investment question for you. What would be the best place to put a $500,000 windfall this year? I'm afraid of something horrible happening. My advice to you is to seek out a professional investment advisor with that kind of money. Period. You can go into him and hold your ground as to what asset classes you think you should put some of that money into. That I'll be happy to talk to you about. I'm happy to talk about. But $500,000 is not peanuts. It's not something that you take the advice of from some jackass on the internet. I'm just being honest here. Okay? No matter how much you might respect my opinion, 500 grand is a lot of money. Okay? And if you want to understand my attitude towards how I think you should how you should structure a part of your investment portfolio, then I absolutely would recommend, obviously, because I publish it every month, the Gold, Goats, and Guns investment letter, where I give you a strategy that you could wrap as a whole portfolio strategy if you'd like, or consider it as one of the funds that you own, and then asset allocate accordingly. Because $500,000 is not peanuts. The follow-up question is actually more, so obviously that means a part of your wealth should be in gold. A part of your wealth should be in relatively high yield generating issues, be it high quality REITs or closed-end funds, whatever, right? There are many ways to get yield in this There are many ways to get yield out there. The problem is, of course, what asset classes that are generating yield, what are their likelihoods of weathering the storm that's coming? Well, that's a very difficult question. And I can tell you that in the newsletter, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. So, but in this phase of things, what the Russians are doing, what the Chinese are doing, what the Turks are doing, by adding to their gold reserves, they make themselves less vulnerable to a radical mispricing or repricing of assets. Brain Cramps asks that they're hoarding gold. What would be the trigger to have them back the ruble / yuan with it? Or will they just use petros instead? I think petro yuan, petro ruble. No one is going to back their currency in gold. Not in a way that you're thinking, i.e. in gold convertibility. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. The most likely thing will be as Jim Sinclair's talked about for years, will be some sort of rejiggering or reevaluating or repegging the money supplies of the various countries to gold as a cover. It's a kind of a gold cover clause, right? To say that, nation's gold reserves will be 5% of M3 or M2 or whatever. And that to me makes the most sense. That the central banks would then have to deal with some level of discipline. But to back their currencies and make it convertible into gold would be absolute and utter suicide. What needs to happen, obviously, is this is why I have a soft spot and believe very strongly that we're gonna see a revolution in money over the rest of my lifetime into cryptocurrencies of one form or another, be it Bitcoin or others, is because money and the issuance of new monetary units has to be freed from the depredations and the potential corruption of human beings. Human beings cannot be trusted with the creation of new monetary units. We have 10,000 years of recorded history which prove this. And cryptocurrencies create for us the option and the possibility for the first time for something like that to happen. Creation of new monetary units, new bitcoins, is an algorithm, and that algorithm is publicly known, and the source code is open to audit and should be open to democratic ownership of some form or another. And whether it's a monolithic single proof of work blockchain like Bitcoin or something else, that's immaterial. So, to finish off Deplorable's question about what's going to happen, is there something bad going to happen in the U.S. share markets in the next 2 years? 2 years, a little hard to say. Next year, there may be a 10 or 15% correction, but who cares? The chart of the S&P 500 just looks brilliant. And it's because Europe has to fall first. If there's political unrest around the world, as long as the United States doesn't screw the pooch, get into a shooting war with Russia, and then have the world find out we can't project power around the world like we have. We can't maintain the world's reserve currency. We can't maintain this as the world's reserve currency this way. It's not possible. When you look at it that way, when you understand it like that, then you understand that that system, that situation is not going to be threatened by their action. They will threaten those who try to get out of the system, which is what they're doing to Russia, China, Turkey, and everybody else right now. But the big question is going to be, but the Ben Bernankes of the world, these guys don't want this to end. They know what happens if the U.S. gets their ass kicked in a war by Russia. It hastens the flow of capital over to China, to global capital over to China, because we will descend into political chaos, which we already are. And Martin Armstrong makes the point, a very salient point, that the people who are opposing Trump at this point really do believe that they can just get rid of Trump and everything will go back to the way it was. Got news for you. That ship sailed. That's not happening. This country is not going back to the way it was. This is a generational shift. This is the end of a 4-year generational cycle. The Gen X that's taking power from the baby boomers right now wants nothing to fucking do with what the baby boomers have built. We want it torn down. And the kids coming behind us, the millennials coming behind us, are far more conservative than anybody gives them any fucking credit for. They're all going to go turn around and go, hey, California, you want to secede? Go for it. We don't want to pay for your bullshit anymore. Because half of us are still living in our parents' bedrooms because we can't get a fucking job. The yuan isn't backed by oil, Brain Cramps. Brain Cramps says that right now the yuan is backed by oil via the petro yuan contract, then convertible into gold via the Shanghai exchange. I agree. It's not pseudo-backed. It isn't. What it is it's a means by which China can allow for investment into its bond markets without the fear of a return on, without a fear of, on the part of international traders, of not being able to get their money out of China by holding it in yuan. They know that they can convert the petro yuan contract in profits into gold, and then from gold into offshore dollars, and then, or offshore yuan, and then out into the real world. They can convert it out and they can get it out of the country. So that's why it's there. But it's not, but you're not going to see massive gold outflows from China while the petro yuan trades. What you're going to see is more investment into Chinese government debt, to yuan denominated debt. So the backing, not really, because none of that goes through the central bank. Okay. Excuse me. So, when you talk about gold backing of the currency, you're talking about the central bank converting their currency into gold. Okay. Yeah, it's really about providing confidence for international traders to come in and start investing heavily in Chinese government debt. That's what it's about. And it's not for Americans. I'm talking specifically here about Russians and Central Asians and Southeast Asians and Japan. Did you guys see the news today that Abe and Putin had met Abe and Putin met again over the weekend to talk about signing a peace treaty? United States, John Bolton's got to be like turning over in his grave. He's got to be like, his mustache has got to be like considering strangling him for Christ's sake. I mean, this won't go away. No matter how much we try to scuttle talks between Abe and Putin about a peace agreement, the economic reality of the situation is that Japan wants Russian gas. And the Kuril Islands is how, and a peace treaty over the Kuril Islands is how that happens. It's not going to happen otherwise. Putin's not stupid. He's not going to give that away. He wants a peace treaty with Japan first before he commits to any kind of assets, to any kind of infrastructure project with Japan. He wants a formal treaty. And the United States keeps trying to scuttle this, and they keep talking about it. And the latest thing I saw this morning is from RT was pretty sincere. They just keep talking about it. And I know that that just drives the Americans nuts. Japan and Russia do have a lot to gain from one another, Deplorable. You're absolutely correct. So every time I think about that guy, it just makes me angrier and angrier. As Stordum brings up, and Japan needs to sign that peace treaty because they are afraid of a China-Russia alliance where they do not play any role. Exactly. And that plays into Korean unification. That plays into, you know, the Trans-Korean Railroad and gas pipelines and power generating stations and all of that stuff. Would that bring closer the day that we leave Japan? Green Penguin asks. It's a good question, and I can't really answer it for you, but I can tell you that I think that that's where we are. Yeah, I wasn't here at 8 o'clock on the nose, Tony. I'm sorry, I was a little late. I was 8 or 9 minutes late. Nature called. So, good to see you again, dude. The early part of this talk tonight was the part that you would have really enjoyed, because yeah, you missed kind of everything I wanted you to hear. I was talking with Tony on Twitter this afternoon and told him to show up. The gist of the matter, the gist of it is that I don't think that there's going to be any kind of, the short story is I don't think there's going to be any serious provocation between the United States and Russia over Idlib. I think it's 99% of this is bluster and calling the neocons and the Israelis bluff over how far they think they can take this, when Mattis and Shoigu and Trump are all going, look, man, no one profits if we get our asses handed to us by the Russians. And everybody on both sides of that fence militarily respects each other too much to start lobbing missiles at each other in any sincerely effectual way. And certainly not over a now obviously staged gas attack. When the leaks within the Trump administration, the supposed leaks within the Trump administration, these anonymous sources who keep talking to the Washington Post, which is all just fucking CIA psyops for all CIA psyops anyway. When you factor that, that's where 95% of this shit is coming from. It's coming from Nikki Haley, who doesn't work for Trump anymore. She works for herself. She works for Bibi Netanyahu, that frickin' cunt. He'll lose more than the Libertarian wing. He'll lose the entire center of the country. So, and then take it one step farther to recap for Tony. The entire world financial system is predicated on political stability and the illusion of U.S. military superiority and the ability to back up our global dominance in the financial markets with our military. These two things go hand in hand. You can't separate one from the other at this point. So we have to have a way to get out of Syria and save face. Now, I know you and I have argued in the past about what all this stuff means. I've always been of the opinion that it was never the plan that this was how it was going to play out, but it was always a potential. It was always dominant potential that it would end up this way. But I don't think anybody had a plan. Okay, that's where I always drew the line here, because while watching it this time, this to me just feels like North Korea all over again, with Trump and everybody threatening doom and gloom, knowing full well that the fight's already been lost. Because in the case of the Koreans, Kim has a nuclear weapon, and both sides of the peninsula now want to talk for the first time in 45 years or 70 years, because we no longer have our boot on the heels of the South Korean, boot on the neck of the South Korean government. So they want peace. He's got a nuke. We have to negotiate. Okay, so we bluster and chest thump and everything else in order to save face, and then be able to turn to the American audience and say, look, we were able to browbeat Kim into submission. It's a lie. But who gives a shit? It works. And in that sense, it's wag the dog. And I think that that's exactly what's happening here. I also think that you take that and mix that with Trump wanting to turn the tables on the neocons to a certain degree, because they are part and parcel the people who are tormenting him in the first place, because they're all deep state neocons. It's all the same shit. It's all a big club and we ain't in it. It's all a big club and he ain't in it. And I just don't think that Mattis and Shoigu are going to greenlight John Bolton's desire to turn Syria into a parking lot and get into a shooting war with Russia, because he still thinks we have nuclear superiority, when they can lob Mach 20 missiles up our ass and wipe out all of our aircraft carriers in an hour. And everybody knows it, which is why Putin showed his hand back in March. Right, Rocket Man. What Trump is setting up here is exactly what Rocket Man just said, and I touched on this in earlier scopes, so I'm going to say it again now. This is just a way to show Assad how that we was browbeaten into submission, just like Kim was supposedly slapped around. Exactly the same thing. Well, look, we bombed him in 2016, we bombed him in 2017. He didn't dare do it in late 2018 or 2017, 2018. Didn't dare do it a third time. 3 strikes and you're out, baby. I'm serious. He wasn't willing to strike out. I'll bet you dollars to dog shit that we will see a tweet with a baseball reference and Assad and chemical weapons from Trump before this is all over. Bet you. No one will take me up on that bet, because no one wants to lose. Because goddamn well, it's just sitting there. It's like, pair bada swing. I mean, think about it. It's so... And then when you tie the whole thing into that, what they want is this thing in perpetuity so they can sell weapons to both sides. What they want is low order conflicts all the time, so that when they need to spin up a boogeyman, when they need to create a 15% correction in the market, so they need to bomb an emerging market currency, they can still do it. Yeah, the markets refuse to believe that. Most people have no idea. The markets don't believe in change unless forced. Markets they run on inertia and bad information forever. They're focused on the wrong things. The markets don't really handicap geopolitics worth a damn, which is why they're always susceptible to major geopolitical shifts, because they're being told every day by the Wall Street, because look, the guys who make these markets are the same guys. Who do they read? The Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, Der Spiegel, the New York Times, The Economist. This is what they read. Bloomberg. And all those guys are saying that Russia's a parking lot, is a gas station on the verge of a financial collapse. It's only the contrarian assholes like me who are going, dude, Russia's the investment of the century. What the fuck's wrong with you? Dragon M, the CIA most likely assassinated Zakharchenko, agreed, and the Abkhazian leader agreed, and nearly killed the Moldovan leader, agreed. The asymmetric response from Russia will be parallel aggression, and the United States will not like it one bit, and neither will Israel. Do I agree with Armstrong's assessment about dire U.S. outlook in 2020? I'm not sure. It all depends on the order of operations. Europe has got to fall apart first. So Europe needs to start falling apart this fall for the 2020. For me to feel that the 2020 timeframe is early enough for that to happen, because it may take longer for Europe to completely implode than that. What do I mean by parallel aggression? Simply put, we shoot down an Su-20, a Syrian Su-22. The Russians attack an unofficial base, an ISIS camp south of Daraa that unofficially, unofficially is stocked to the gills with American troops and British special forces, and the Russians bombed it. And no one can say anything about it because they weren't actually there. That's what I'm talking about. Putin is the master at not escalating, but giving back exactly what he got in another way. You sanction my country over, you sanction Russia over Crimea. You won't let us sell, you won't let us have access to the banks. Fine. Well, we're going to cut off European dairy imports. Doesn't sound like much, except the fact that all the European dairy industries were rife for getting fucked by losing the Russian market. And then and then he turned around and stopped subsidizing oil and gas and subsidized and moved those same subsidies over into agriculture. And now Russia's agricultural production is so strong that they're now the biggest wheat exporters in the world, and they produce all of their own dairy and are now becoming dairy exporters for the first time in forever. Do people have to realize that after the world witnessed how Syria was able to fight off U.S. missile attacks by just using Russia's older anti-missile defense systems, U.S. military supremacy was exposed? I mostly agree with that. It was the Pantsir S-1 and S-2 missile defense systems that apparently did yeoman's work in April, not the S-300s. Those things are really good at what they do. Yes, so expect something to happen on the contact line in the Donbass. Expect something to happen in the Sea of Azov. Yeah, I saw that as well, North on 60, that the Russian FSB, a Dagestani ISIS conscript who was conscripted and paid by Ukraine to do terrorist attacks in Russia. Yeah, the FSB is very good at their job. Yeah, the Russian military stuff that was operated by Russians was not used at all. I know. The Syrian air defense crews are well trained now, and that's why Netanyahu is scared to death. Not everybody in Mark Bogosian. I understand that, and I expect that not everybody makes, you know, I will amend that statement. Not everybody, but a great deal of these guys do. Great deal of these guys still don't read Zero Hedge. Don't. But it's good that you do, and I'm glad you're here. So it's better now than it used to be. But, you know, moreover, when you factor what I said in before, along with the fact that there's only certain places that a lot of institutional money can run. It's not, you know, large sums of cash are just not easy to move, period. They didn't. Okay, Rocket Man, Russia did nothing in response to the airstrikes in April 2017, 2018. No, they didn't. Well, no, not that you know of. And not directly. They did other things. But more importantly, there's no reason to strike back. Remember, Russia is playing for time. Putin is running Peter the Great's plan of needing 20 years of without interference from the West in order to rebuild itself properly. And yes, Riverboat, John McCain is still dead. I should really open up like every show with just put on my best Chevy Chase voice and go, and today in the news, Elisimo Francisco Franco is still dead, right? The old Chevy Chase joke from Saturday Night Live when he used to do the news. We should do that with John. We should start that with John McCain. But don't mistake the lack of direct response for no response, because Putin is playing for time. He's got a different agenda than just, you know, he's not in this for his ego. He's in this to ensure that Russia survives. John Kasich says McCain was put to death. My thoughts are that John McCain died weeks ago, and he only just And they brought him out when they needed to bring him out. Yeah. How long was McCain actually dead before his death was publicly pronounced? Could have been a while. I did not see that, Thordoom. Have I seen that the Communist Party leader in Russia put forward a bill to recognize Donetsk and be admitted into the Russian Federation? I did not see that. I'm not surprised. And that's what the Communist Party leader should do. One of the issues with Russia, and one of the issues that Putin's going to have going forward, is actually allowing for credible opposition to him grow, because there's just not anything there. It's like, you know, I used to do LP politics. You know, I used to be a prominent member of the Libertarian Party. And I remember going to my first Libertarian State Party convention and being really underwhelmed because there was like, 40 people in the room. I'm like, this is it? This is the political brain trust? I wouldn't vote for these people. Oh shit. And I just turned to Camille about, I don't know, like the first day, near the end of the first day, I said, if we really wanted to, we could like take this thing over inside of 2 years. He's like, I know. I'm like, well, there you go. So, the reality is that most of the smaller parties in Russia are in effect no more organized than the Greens or the Libertarians here in the United States. And that's the problem. The Russians just don't find them credible. That's why they have like 3 to 5% support. It's not really, it's nothing more sinister than that. So that's what it is. But I think it's interesting that the Communist Party leader did that. It's a way to push Putin on an issue that he's looking weak on with hardliners. I am fine. How are you? So, 47 minutes. I got about 10 minutes left. What do you guys want to talk about? I saw a question about 6K on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's looking like it's building a base here. Until we actually get a little bit more technical strength. I'm going to look. I didn't actually have a chance to look at it today to see what actually happened. So, it is the second largest party in Russia, but it's still not particularly good. 63.27, yeah. So, after last weekend's Goldman-induced washout, it's pretty much holding serve. Yeah, gold is fucking around near 1200, and they're trying to keep the euro propped up. I know that, but yeah, Navalny is owned and operated by Khodorkovsky, and he's a CIA jackass, and he has like 1% support. What would an actual blue wave look like? We only do reality here on Gold, Goats, and Guns. I don't do fantasy. Now, if I ever do a live stream about, the movies I like, well, then we can get into fantasy and blue waves and everything. What are my thoughts on debt jubilee? The libertarian in me says no, right? Says if you owe your debts, you owe your debts. But the truth of the matter is that those debts were never entered into honestly. So a lot of the debt that's in existence today, I would consider a contract of adhesion, and therefore, I'm okay with some of it. The problem is that the banks will never go along with it because it means that they'll be insolvent and exposed. The problem with the LP is that the Koch brothers took it over 15 years ago, which is why I left. What will break Europe? Euro migration, the euro, immigration, Italy, etc. All of the above. Russia is well on their way to fixing their demographic issue. They're better than we are and promoting families. I agree with that. They're also still doing very smart immigration, right? These are all good questions tonight. It's fantastic. So they are, but they still have a demographic issue with a very small generation coming out of the 90s. So those that generation better get busy making babies. Why is gold struggling to find any upward momentum? Because we're in this weird period where the dollar is strong and there's not a lot of liquidity behind the scenes because the Fed has been rolling off the treasuries on their balance sheet and shrinking their balance sheet, which is causing liquidity issues. And the euro dollar markets have been under stress for a while now as money moves out of those markets. And when that happens, gold is always under stress. And gold is not going to break to the upside until there is some form of real political crisis in a major country. And so far, Merkel has been able to very cockroach-like stay in power, but something could change. Honestly, what would send the gold through the roof tomorrow? Impeaching Trump. Can Trump survive a Democratic House for 2 years if it came down to that? Maybe. Maybe. Half of their pregnancies end in abortion. No, they don't. That is old data. Deplorable. Please go look at, please go spend some time over at Rosstat, the Russian websites. You'll see the Russian statisticals. You can also go to like tradingeconomics.com because they have most of the information there as well. Abortions as a percentages of live birth have dropped by 90% in the last 15 years. You're welcome, NASDAQ Pat. More than welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Up in Manchuria, the rich Chinese men are marrying Russian women in higher numbers. Is China bringing gold down with its currency linked to the CNH gold? Very possible that there's that going on. Could also be that as money starts to flow through the petro-yuan contract, that we're seeing conversion into gold and then that gold getting sold. We could be seeing that, a little bit of that as well. Yeah, no, just go straight to Rosstat, right? The Russian state statistical service. I mean, I did that work a couple of years ago, right? When I first started recommending Russia in my newsletter for Newsmax back in 2015, right at the height of the ruble crisis. And I had to actually convince my editors that this was what I wanted to do and this is what we were going to do. And I worked really, I had to work like far harder to do this than I really thought I needed to, because to me it was just obvious. At the very least, buy the blood in the streets moment, because you've got at least a 20% bounce, you know, over the first 3 months, which is exactly what happened. There was about a 40% bounce in the Russian ETF, RSX. 20% from a rise on the stock market and 20% rise in the currency. So if you bought the bottom, you could have easily made 40% in like, 6 weeks. Regardless of that, neither that newsletter nor my new one is really predicated on that kind of short-term trading. So I don't do that kind of stuff. I really try to take positions that I want to hold for 3 to 5 or 7 years. And so, we're making the argument for Russia. I had to go through all of the demographic stuff, and then we did a couple of I kept trying to do a promotion for that newsletter, and we did one, and it was on Russia. And dude, it was like when you go into the numbers and you see the massive improvement in quality of life for Russians since Putin has taken over. Everything you've heard about Putin is a lie. Just go look at the numbers yourself. And I invoked Putin bringing up Peter the Great's 20 Years of Peace, or Peter Stolpian. Peter the Great. That quote for a reason. Because that's what Putin's doing, and that's the game plan he's running. And there hasn't been a better time to have been born Russian than since Peter Stolpian was Tsar. Because we've been fucking, between us and the Brits, we've been fucking with Russia for the last 140 years. Will Russia go through the same purge Russia did in the 1990s? No. I don't think it'll be that bad. I think global capital will eventually leave us hanging, but everybody else has got to fail first. And then it'll be us. Unless there's a political upheaval here in the United States, i.e., impeaching Trump, which is the wild card at this point. But if Trump is not impeached, if Trump survives, Europe is going to collapse, then Japan, and then us. And the dollar will go through a super cycle high that will burn your tits off. And gold will rise along with it, because it will be a flight into hard assets and out of sovereign debt. That's the Martin Armstrong thesis, and I agree with it completely. So, $55 minutes. What else we got, guys? Anything? I've had a long day. I've been speaking into a microphone way too much for the last 2 days. I did enjoy doing the interview with Alex Craner, the author of the Bill Browder expose. Alex is a great guy. We had a lovely talk. If you haven't watched it yet, I recommend it, just to hear somebody. If for nothing else, if you listen to the interview, just to get an idea, a sense of somebody who, this is what the face of a man, the voice of a man who can't sit idly by, and that in and of itself was certainly worth my time to listen to. So I'd never interviewed anybody before, so if it was good, then it was an accident. All right. What about Google? Did Trump go after them today? I have no idea. Who will do better during this race to safety, gold or Bitcoin? Good question. Can't answer that one. What's the investment role of silver compared to gold? I've never had it explained to me adequately. Okay, so this is a good question, and I'll answer it for you. Silver is poor man's gold when it comes to I think RSX is listed on the UK exchange, on the London exchange, but I'm not sure. But if not, then it's going to be anything based on the MSCI Russia index should be fine, as long as there's enough AUM and the spreads aren't bad. Okay, you know what I mean by AUM? It's assets under management. As long as it's relatively liquid and the spreads aren't bad and you can get in and out, you should be okay. Because the Russian stock market isn't particularly deep, so it's going to be mostly the blue chips anyway, and most of the blue chips are pretty good at this point. So back to silver, and then I'm going to go. Okay, so silver is poor man's gold. So what you want to watch for with silver and gold is the silver to gold ratio. Gold will always lead as a response to monetary upheaval, because gold is a monetary metal, because it doesn't have very much industrial character. On the other hand, silver is kind of half a commodity and half money. And with the rise of Bitcoin, I'd even say that silver is now around 40% monetary and 60% industrial. Appreciate you saying that, Resolute Bell. Appreciate that a lot. So when you, yeah, we have the best people here on Gold, Goats, and Guns. There's just no doubt. Right, y'all fucking rock. So when there's monetary strife, and that means when there's loss of confidence in governmental institutions, gold is going to rise. That's when you're going to see the biggest rise in the price of gold. Same thing will happen with silver, unless there's some massive industrial usage that starts pulling away silver supply. But even then, there's more than enough primary silver suppliers out there at this point that they can spin up production relatively quickly. You may see a 6 to 9 month spike, but then the price will just relax under industrial demand scenarios. But once gold starts getting expensive, gold will always break out first, and then silver will catch up. Or silver will collapse in price, kind of like we're doing now, terribly undervalued. The silver to gold ratio is something like, was it 85 to 1 or something like that? I mean, it's terrible. It's, hold on, I'll tell you what it is right now, because it's really, really high. 85 to 1. Yeah, off the top of my head, it's 84.6 to 1. And 85 to 1 on the silver to gold ratio just means that silver is terribly undervalued relative to gold, meaning that when the monetary stress happens and gold starts to rise and the bull market starts, silver is going to outperform gold for the first phase of it. And then silver will go into a mania phase and overshoot gold. Will usually touch right around the natural abundance ratio of around 13 to 15 to 1 and then collapse again, which is exactly what we've seen in every other silver and gold bull market like that. I do mostly longer swing trades based on monthly charts, not daily charts. I only look at weekly charts to discuss them on the twice weekly market reports, just to have something really to talk about. But I much prefer to, on a weekly basis or a twice weekly basis, I much prefer to even just look at monthly and quarterly charts. That's really all I really care about anymore. I'm not really interested in anything else. So, and even then, you know, investment, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm invested in LNG for the long haul, guys. I mean, I'm sorry. Europe needs LNG. Everybody needs it. It's coming. It's happening now. The demand curve is just starting to rise. Talk about an under fucking valued market. Holy sheep shit. So, you know, those companies keep falling. I keep buying. I'm sorry. So don't that's the real fundamental investment thesis for silver. Silver will always overshoot gold during the bull market because silver will always be pushed down farther during the bear market because it's half industrial metal and doesn't trade as an industrial asset. It doesn't trade as a monetary asset during a bear market. It trades as an industrial asset during a bear market, and well, then it's just ground down to its friggin' production prices, which is exactly where we are now. We've got primary silver producers are cutting back on production because things aren't sustainable at $14 an ounce. That's when you want to buy, and absolutely want to buy silver miners that are smart. There's only a couple of them out there. Most of them suck. I'm glad that was what you needed. You'll rarely get that. You'll rarely ever get that from any of the silver. You won't get that from a moron like David Morgan because he's really a moron. And I don't say that lightly. I've met David Morgan. I'm not impressed. I've met most of the guys in the gold industry. I'm not impressed with most of them, but the only one I was ever really impressed with was freaking Rick Rule. So, and I'm on the podcast one of these days, and it'll be a lot, and depending on the guy, it'll be a lot less cordial than the Alex Craner interview was yesterday. So, but that's not really Dale Carnegie making friends and influencing people, right? All right. Well, whatever. They're not watching the stream tonight, so I don't give a shit about me laying down the gauntlet or anything. Yeah, that's not a bad plan, dude. Especially in this market. Dragon says he invests in geriatrics and follows the demographics: pharma, old age homes, nursing homes. It's a boom industry here. But I can't tell you how many of my former subscribers that I'm still in touch with, my old newsletter, and current subscribers today that I chat with, either by text. I'm like, stop listening to Ted Butler. He's an idiot. Truly. Take that subscription fee and double down on me. At least you can get me on the phone. All right. I don't know why I say that in public. That's really actually quite rude, but whatever. I don't give a shit. All right. It's been an hour and 4. We're good. It's been the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. If you guys liked what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. That'd be great. Sign up for notifications for when I do go live, which are generally at Monday nights at 8 plus or minus 10 minutes, and Friday nights at 8:30. I'm moving it up a half an hour so that I can get done before 10 o'clock. And subscribe over here on YouTube, and make sure you check out the blog over at Gold Goats and Guns. Subscribe now to the podcast, either on iTunes or Spotify. I'm waiting on iHeartRadio. And if you really like what you heard tonight, certainly the investment stuff, you can sign up for the Gold Goats and Guns newsletter over at Patreon at Patreon.com/Gold Goats and Guns. You guys have a great night. Take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.